The sky split open like a cracked bone. It began with the static. All across Earth, screens flickered into seizure-inducing chaos, symbols spiraled in alien fractals, and voices chattered in languages no one understood. At first, people assumed it was a cyber attack, maybe a prank, a new form of viral marketing. Then came the ships, massive black monoliths, 10 kilometers long, hung in the sky like predatory statues. No engines, no visible thrust. They moved like they were being dragged by unseen gods. They didn't answer hails. They didn't fire warning shots. They simply began the harvest. Rael Thorne had been in the Houston Space Flight Center when the first orbital beam lanced through the Gulf. In a heartbeat, Galveston vanished into glowing mist. He barely made it to the underground complex before the blast wave tore through the upper facility. He remembered the screaming, the smell of melting plastic, the silence that followed. That was 6 months ago. Now he stood under a sickly yellow sky in what used to be Colorado Springs. The air was tainted with ash and fine metallic dust. A Zarketh megastructure hovered above the Rocky Mountains, slowly, rotating like a celestial blade. Below it, a forced labor camp stretched across the valley, its fences glowing with violet energy. Rael stood in the processing line with 100 other prisoners, former engineers, artists, soldiers, farmers, now reduced to inventory numbers stitched into gray jumpsuits. A woman in line next to him whispered without looking up. "They call it population compliance, but it's sterilization, chemical, bioactive. We can't reproduce anymore." Rael nodded slightly. He'd heard the rumors. The Zarketh were precise in their cruelty. They didn't waste resources exterminating populations. They made sure there'd be no next generation instead. The woman looked up at him. Her face was sunburned and hollow-eyed, but something fierce flickered behind the fatigue. Her NASA patch was scorched but intact. "Rael Thorne," she said. "You were on the Daedalus program, ion propulsion test beds. I saw your talk in Singapore. That was you, right?" He blinked. It had been years. A different life. "I was," he said quietly. "I'm Sarai Mendez, biochemist, UN Research Council, or I was." Another line of humans was marched past them, children this time, no older than 12, corralled into an armored transport that rumbled toward the edge of the camp. Rael's jaw tightened. They said the children would be sent off-world. They won't come back. A thrum passed through the ground. Everyone stopped. The atmosphere shifted. One of the Zarketh enforcers, a towering six-limbed creature with obsidian armor and no visible eyes, strode along the perimeter. It let out a clicking trill that resonated like sonar. A man 2 rows ahead fell to his knees, sobbing. "Please, we're not a threat." The enforcer snapped its claw forward. A sonic pulse shattered the man's skull. Silence fell again. They weren't soldiers, Rael thought. Not in the way humanity understood it. They were gardeners pruning overgrowth, genocide as administration. But as the enforcer moved on, Rael felt something ignite in his chest. Not fear, not even grief, rage. Rage at the silence, rage at the surrender, rage that the galaxy had looked at humanity and seen only a weed to be pulled. That night, inside a maintenance tunnel near the barracks, he met with 3 others. Sarai, a wiry man named Holt, who claimed to have once flown stealth recon in the Pacific, and a mechanic named Lara with grease-streaked hands and eyes like flint. "We don't have weapons," Lara said. "We'll make them," Rael replied. "There are no comms," Sarai added. "The Zarketh control the entire EM spectrum." "Then we build new ones," he said. "If they can suppress a signal, they can't stop physics." Holt snorted. "Even if we escape, where the hell do we go?" Rael's gaze never wavered. "We don't run. We spread. We make them chase us. And Then we burn them down." No one spoke for a long moment, and then, quietly, fiercely, Sarai nodded. The culling of Earth had been meant to end them. But in the ashes, something ancient had stirred. Human defiance, a single rusted tool smuggled from the labor pits of Zone 9 into the air circulation tunnels. Lara had hidden it beneath her jumpsuit, wrapped in foil scraps to evade Zarketh biometric scanners. Nothing metal passed through the gates unchecked. Nothing human was trusted with leverage, but leverage was exactly what they needed. They began assembling what little they had. Scraps of conduit became antennae. Discarded crystal cores from broken Zarketh drones, supposedly inert, were coaxed back to life using repurposed solar nodes. Holt cannibalized a decommissioned loader mech's gyroscopic stabilizer. Sarai cracked the local sensor-dampening field using an improvised neurofeedback loop and a live rat as the test subject. It died, of course, but they got a ping. Low orbit. "Maintenance drone relay network," she reported, voice trembling from adrenaline. "I can bounce a signal to at least 3 other camps, maybe more." Rael leaned over the flickering array of scavenged devices, eyes glinting. "Then we're not alone." Across the Zarketh-controlled territories of Earth, survivors still toiled. Camp Theta 7 in the Mojave Desert, Extraction Hive Delta near Patagonia, deep-bore slave chambers in the Himalayas. Each a node in a global machine of conquest. But no matter how advanced the Zarketh were, they hadn't accounted for one thing. Humans adapted. Rael knew how to talk to engineers. He encoded blueprints in Old Morse and buried them in atmospheric data bursts. He transmitted messages using outdated Earth military satellites they assumed were long dead. The signal went out, and people responded. A woman in Camp Theta 7 detonated the fusion battery of a transport crawler, taking out 3 enforcers and a command unit. A teenage boy in Hive Delta hijacked the internal gravity drive of his work shaft and crushed 2 slave masters into the ceiling like bloodstains. A mute child in the Siberian outpost of Borshevo built a comm relay from melted snow, copper coils, and a Zarketh ankle restraint. The signal she sent reached Mars. The resistance wasn't coordinated, but it was everywhere. The first full breach happened in orbit. The Zarketh prison transport Drekva was en route to a deep space processing facility near the edge of the solar system. It carried 213 human prisoners in cryostasis and a skeleton crew of 9 Zarketh wardens. It never arrived. 3 prisoners woke mid-flight. They weren't supposed to. Sarai had slipped in the override code weeks before. The Dominion's software couldn't handle human neural chaos, too much unpredictability in the way the brain wired trauma, language, and memory. She'd used that chaos like a scalpel. Within 15 minutes of awakening, the 3 had vented the Zarketh crew into space, rerouted life support, and transmitted one clear message across every known rebel frequency. "The Black Banner rises." The phrase came from an old Earth myth, pirates who flew a black flag to show no quarter would be given. It was meant to inspire terror, and it did. Rael smiled when he heard it. Let them be afraid. But it also did something else. It gave the scattered embers of resistance a name, a purpose. The humans weren't just surviving now. They were fighting back. In Camp 17, Rael stared at the sky, watching faint streaks of light arc through the darkness above the mountains. Zarketh drones, moving in strange, erratic patterns. "They know something's wrong," Holt said beside him. "They're hunting for the signal." "They can hunt all they want," Rael replied, lips tightening. "The fire's already spreading." Sarai stepped out of the tunnel entrance, her hands blackened with soot, eyes glowing with purpose. "I've mapped their internal drone command network. There's a choke point, one we can hit." Rael didn't ask if it would be risky. Of course it would. He just said, "Then let's cut their throat." In the dark, deep beneath a world they tried to break, Humanity had done the one thing the Zarketh didn't anticipate. We remembered who we are. A single rusted tool smuggled from the labor pits of Zone 9 into the air circulation tunnels. Lara had hidden it beneath her jumpsuit, wrapped in foil scraps to evade Zarketh biometric scanners. Nothing metal passed through the gates unchecked. Nothing human was trusted with leverage, but leverage was exactly what they needed. They began assembling what little they had. Scraps of conduit became antennae. Discarded crystal cores from broken Zarketh drones, supposedly inert, were coaxed back to life using repurposed solar nodes. Holt cannibalized a decommissioned Loader Mech's gyroscopic stabilizer. Sarai cracked the local sensor dampening field using an improvised neurofeedback loop and a live rat as the test subject. It died, of course, but they got a ping. Low orbit. Maintenance drone relay network, she reported, voice trembling from adrenaline. I can bounce a signal to at least 3 other camps, maybe more. Rael leaned over the flickering array of scavenged devices, eyes glinting. Then we're not alone. Across the Zarketh-controlled territories of Earth, survivors still toiled. Camp Theta 7 in the Mojave Desert, Extraction Hive Delta near Patagonia, deep-bore slave chambers in the Himalayas, each a node in a global machine of conquest. But no matter how advanced the Zarketh were, they hadn't accounted for one thing. Humans adapted. Rael knew how to talk to engineers. He encoded blueprints in Old Morse and buried them in atmospheric data bursts. He transmitted messages using outdated Earth military satellites they assumed were long dead. The signal went out, and people responded. A woman in Camp Theta 7 detonated the fusion battery of a transport crawler, taking out 3 enforcers and a command unit. A teenage boy in Hive Delta hijacked the internal gravity drive of his work shaft and crushed 2 slave masters into the ceiling like bloodstains. A mute child in the Siberian outpost of Borshchevo built a comm relay from melted snow, copper coils, and a Zarketh ankle restraint. The signal she sent reached Mars. The resistance wasn't coordinated, but it was everywhere. The first full breach happened in orbit. The Zarketh prison transport Drekhva was en route to a deep space processing facility near the edge of the solar system. It carried 213 human prisoners in cryostasis and a skeleton crew of 9 Zarketh wardens. It never arrived. 3 prisoners woke mid-flight. They weren't supposed to. Sarai had slipped in the override code weeks before. The Dominion software couldn't handle human neural chaos. Too much unpredictability in the way the brain wired trauma, language, and memory. She'd use that chaos like a scalpel. Within 15 minutes of awakening, the 3 had vented the Zarketh crew into space, rerouted life support, and transmitted one clear message across every known rebel frequency. The Black Banner rises. Phrase came from an old Earth myth. Pirates who flew a black flag to show no quarter would be given. It was meant to inspire terror. And it did. Rael smiled when he heard it. Let them be afraid. But it also did something else. It gave the scattered embers of resistance a name, a purpose. The humans weren't just surviving now. They were fighting back. In Camp 17, Rael stared at the sky, watching faint streaks of light arc through the darkness above the mountains. Zarketh drones, moving in strange, erratic patterns. They know something's wrong, Holt said beside him. They're hunting for the signal. They can hunt all they want, Rael replied, lips tightening. The fire's already spreading. Sarai stepped out of the tunnel entrance, her hands blackened with soot, eyes glowing with purpose. I've mapped their internal drone command network. There's a choke point, one we can hit. Rael didn't ask if it would be risky. Of course it would. He just said, then let's cut their throat. In the dark, deep beneath a world they tried to break, humanity had done the one thing the Zarketh didn't anticipate. We remembered who we are. The signal spread like wildfire through the ruins of Earth. A symbol, etched in ash. Broadcast on. Hijacked Dominion channels, painted in blood on walls the Zarketh couldn't sanitize. A ragged black triangle streaked with red, rising like a blade against a void. The Black Banner. It didn't mean hope. It didn't mean freedom. It meant war. Rael Thorn stood in the command node of a stolen Zarketh crawler, its walls scorched, its systems rewired. Rebel techs were clustered around the central interface, jury-rigging control schemes with stripped-out Earth laptops and metal scrap. Sparks flew. The smell of ozone and oil clung to everything. "We've reprogrammed the mobility AI," one of the techs reported. "It only speaks in trinary logic, but Lara left behind some code frameworks. It should hold." Rael nodded. "That crawler has shielding strong enough to survive a railgun barrage. Now it'll carry us into Vrolon's heart." Holt stepped inside, still limping from the last skirmish. "You sure he's even in Vorash Prime?" Rael didn't answer immediately. He stared at a holograph flickering over the console, Dominion troop deployments across Earth. Vrolon was moving slower now, more calculated. The Predator had begun to study the prey. "He wants us to come," Rael said finally. "He thinks he can break the resistance by breaking me." Holt snorted. "Then let's make him choke on our bones." Across the globe, sparks ignited into flames. In the Pacific, former cargo haulers converted into warships fired on Zarketh patrols with modified torpedoes. In the Sahara, a nomadic tribe lured 2 enforcer squads into a glass canyon, collapsed the walls, and buried them alive. In the orbit of Europa, human hackers crashed a Dominion information server into the ice at Mach 7, every act broadcast, every name remembered. The Zarketh Empire had ruled with silence, fear, surgical extermination, but humanity had turned pain into signal. Every time Vrolon retaliated, the stories grew. The grandmother who blew herself up to destroy a Zarketh logistics hub. The child who poisoned an enforcer's coolant line using a melted toy. The deserter who snuck behind Dominion lines with nothing but a scalpel and a steel heart and killed 3 of their tacticians in their sleep. The stories weren't just morale, they were recruitment. In a subglacial chamber beneath Vorash Prime, the largest Zarketh bastion on Earth, Vrolon stood before a biotemporal map of resistance cells. Dozens of red dots, unpredictable, spreading. A lesser general approached. "High Enforcer, we've received another Black Banner broadcast, this one from Ganymede. They've claimed 2 Dominion resource colonies." Vrolon didn't respond. Instead, he walked toward a stasis tube containing a human woman, scarred, sedated, suspended in thick cryogel. "Sarai Mendez. We captured her near the debris fields," the general continued. "Thorn was with her. He escaped." Vrolon touched the glass. "Good," the stasis tube hissed as it powered down. "Interrogate her?" the general asked. "No," Vrolon said, turning away. "Release her! Let her run!" The general recoiled. "But why?" "She will lead him to me." Rael's forces reached the outskirts of Vorash Prime with 6 crawlers, 14 drones, 2 cobbled-together mechs, and less than 80 fighters. Vrolon's army had 10,000 soldiers and automated defenses capable of cutting through star cruisers. The humans didn't care. The first wave was a bluff. Drones launched suicide dives, triggering Dominion countermeasures. While the system recalibrated, Holt and Rael's teams breached the perimeter through waste tunnels. Inside, Sarai was already waiting, freed by Vrolon, yes, but carrying a tracker of her own. "They let me go," she said, meeting Rael's eyes. "But I led them here, to a trap of their own making." Rael turned to his people. "This is no longer a rebellion. It's a reckoning. And above, in the sky where Earth once wept under alien rule, a signal burned across every Dominion channel. We are the Black Banner, and we've come for blood." It began with a scream in the walls. The Vorash Prime bastion once an impenetrable Zarketh fortress carved into the bones of ancient tectonic plates, was now echoing with human war chants. Explosions shook the substructure. Alarm glyphs flared, in sickly green across the command chamber. Zarketh war tacticians scrambled to reroute fire control, but half the drones had gone dark. Inside the vent shafts, humans moved like smoke. Rail Thorn led the charge through Sublevel 3, carving a path with a jury-rigged plasma cutter and a stolen Zarketh beam rifle slung across his back. His HUD blinked with warning signs: low oxygen, critical ammo, 2, squadmates KIA. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. "This section leads straight to Central AI Control," Sarai said through grit teeth as she patched a bleeding wound on her thigh. "We overload that core. We blind the whole city." Rail nodded. "Then we don't stop moving." Behind them, Holt lobbed a canister of molten phosphorus into an approaching patrol. Zarketh enforcers screamed, not in pain, but in distortion, like code unraveling. Their armor boiled and sloughed off their alien bodies like melting wax. "Push. Forward!" Holt bellowed. "Black Banner! Push forward!" Across Earth, the signal went out. "Vorash is under siege!" For the first time in Dominion history, an occupied world had launched an assault not from orbit, but from within. Humans weren't raiders or rebels anymore. They were invaders. In the high towers of Zarketh-controlled Mars, underground cells activated. Automated manufactories were hijacked and used to fabricate war drones, built from mining equipment and fusion battery casings. In the domes of Europa, enslaved engineers converted life support systems into weaponized coolant bombs, a phrase began circulating on every hacked Dominion channel. Dominion bleeds. It wasn't a metaphor. Back in Vorash, Rail reached the AI core. The room was enormous, half the size of a stadium, pulsing with cold blue light and threaded with coils of living circuitry. Inside, the Dominion's central intelligence pulsed like a synthetic heart, a living mind overseeing all military operations on Earth. "It's awake," Sarai warned. Too late. The AI flared. Zarketh command drones dropped from the ceiling like predatory insects, limbs whirring with high-speed blades and bioplasma emitters. One of the Black Banner fighters screamed as her arm was severed. Another was vaporized by a precision beam. Rael shouted, "EMP charges, now!" Sarai tossed the charge. Holt activated the secondary. The room went white, painfully, blindingly white. When the light faded, 5 humans were left alive, and the Dominion core was dead. Its light dimmed to gray. Its code bled into the floor like dying nerves. All across Vorash, Zarketh coordination collapsed. Turrets failed to track. Enforcers received contradictory orders. Targeting software rebooted in endless loops. Communications went dark. For the first time in over a century, the Dominion didn't know what to do. Vrillon stood at the edge of the city's upper bastion, watching the fires rise. He did not move. He did not panic. He analyzed. "Core offline," his second-in-command reported. "Primary command fallen. We've lost internal control grids in sectors 2 through 7. Reinforcements? None. Interstellar relays are jammed. Human signals are saturating every frequency." Vrillon watched a crawler, one of their own, now flying a hand-painted black banner, smash through the eastern gate, gouting flame and gunfire. "They are not just resisting," Vrillon said. "No, sir," the officer said, trembling. "They're winning." Vrillon turned toward the blast doors. "Then it's time I reminded them," he growled. "What a god of war looks like." In the shattered control chamber, Rail stood over the Dominion core, breathing hard. His comm crackled. "Rail," Holt said. "He's coming." Rail didn't ask who. He already knew. The Butcher of Vorash. And this time the Black Banner would face him face to face. The doors opened with a sound like a planet exhaling. The chamber was dark, silent, except for the hum of distant power reserves. A low thrum that made Rael's molars vibrate. Smoke curled along the floor. Cracked Dominion glyphs flickered on half-dead walls. And then he stepped through. Vralon, twice the size of a human, clad in jagged obsidian armor. His limbs gleamed with surgical precision, plated with trophies from extinguished species. Each step was a thunderclap. Behind him, 4 Dominion guards followed and disintegrated as he waved them back. This fight was personal. Rael Thorn stared him down, blood crusted on his face, one arm in a crude sling. He didn't reach for a weapon. He spoke first. "I know what you are." Vralon's voice boomed like tectonic pressure collapsing a cavern. "I am the judgment of empires. I am the blade that ends rebellion. You are an anomaly." Rael smirked. "We are all anomalies now." Vralon moved. In an instant, he crossed the chamber, faster than any human should have been able to track. His fist, plated with neutronium knuckles, carved through the air and shattered the pillar where Rael had been. Rael rolled, drawing his beam rifle mid-dodge. He fired. The shot hit square in Vralon's chest. The energy dispersed across the Dominion warlord's armor with a shimmer of violet light. "You think your weapons matter?" Vralon growled, swatting Rael aside like a rag doll. Rael hit the floor hard, ribs cracking, but he didn't stay down. He grinned blood through his teeth. "That wasn't a shot. That was a beacon." From above, a hole in the ceiling detonated. "Holt!" Sarai. And a team of 6 Black Banner fighters rappelled in from above. EMP charges were tossed. Rail spikes launched. One fighter unleashed a thermal blade, an arc of raw heat powered by a stolen Dominion microcore. They hit Vralon from every angle. He didn't fall. He roared. A shockwave burst from his core, hurling half the squad across the room. Holt slammed into a wall and didn't get back up. Sarai crawled behind cover, bleeding from her scalp. Rael stood again. "Keep hitting him," he shouted. "He's not invincible." Vralon twisted mid-charge and impaled one rebel with his forearm. Spike. "I am inevitability," he hissed. But Sarai had seen it. The shimmer on his armor, different this time. One of the EMP bursts had caused a minor glitch in the shielding. A weakness. She activated her wrist comm. "Rael, right side, behind the lower shoulder joint." Rael didn't hesitate. He sprinted, ducking past Vralon's blade, and drove the barrel of a pulse rifle deep into the weak spot, and fired. Vralon staggered. For the first time, he bled, thick violet ichor spraying across the floor. The room went still. Rael stood behind him, panting. Still inevitable? Vralon turned slowly. Not dead, not defeated, but wounded and enraged. He grabbed Rael by the throat and lifted him high. "Your death will be broadcast to every survivor," he snarled. Then he stopped. Behind Rael, the Ya. Dominion core, long inert, flared once more, because Sarai had overridden its final failsafe. One last buried command, planetary sync detonation. She keyed it in. "Let's see how many species survive us." Vralon's eyes widened. Calculations. Racing! He dropped Rael. Impossible. "No," Rael whispered, clutching his neck. "Human." The core ignited. A blinding burst of raw code erupted from the walls, scrambling Dominion systems across the bastion. Every active Zarketh unit inside Vorash seized, locked, or combusted. Vralon took one step back. Then he fell to his knees. Not dead, but beaten. Outside, the Black Banner forces raised their signal on the fortress ruins. Rael limped through the rubble, smoke curling around him, body broken, but spirit intact. The Butcher of Vorash had fallen, and humanity had proven it. Gods bleed. The fall of Vorash didn't echo through the galaxy. It screamed. The Black Banner broadcast Vrelon's defeat on every frequency the Dominion once controlled, every broken fragment of his obsidian armor, every hacked video frame of the God-Killer. Himself kneeling in the ruins of his fortress, blood pooling beneath him. To the Zarketh, it was unthinkable. To everyone else, revolution. Subjugated species across the Dominion, once too terrified to rebel, now turned their eyes to Earth. If the humans, weakest and newest of all, could bring down the Butcher of Vorash, what excuse did the others have? First came the Tolari. Their star fields flickered with civil war. Then the Roven. Their orbital gates burned from within. Even the Varnax Collective, long considered Dominion loyalists, began supplying human cells with phase tech disruptors. The galaxy cracked along. The fault lines the Zarketh had spent eons sewing together. And back on Earth, Rael Thorn limped through the ash, watching it all unfold. In the ruins of Vorash Prime, Sarai Mendez stood beside the Dominion's shattered AI core, wiring it into a human-built interface. What do you think you're doing? Holt asked, bandaged and bruised but walking again. Turning their brain into our mouthpiece, she said. You want to win a war? Start with their truth engines. The hacked AI, now stripped of its higher security protocols, pulsed weakly. Just enough for Sarai to co-opt its transmitter. She spoke into the mic. This is Commander Sarai Mendez of the Black Banner. Earth is no longer under Dominion control. Vrelon is down. Vorash has fallen. If you're watching this and you are not Zarketh, you are one of us. The chains are broken. And then she gave the command. Rise. The AI obeyed. Across Dominion, space infrastructure began to turn against itself. Autonomous repair units rerouted to sabotage critical nodes. Logistics drones dropped supplies to rebel zones. Zarketh warships suddenly found themselves locked out of their own targeting systems, their engines refusing to engage warp unless rerouted through unauthorized coordinates that led to ambushes. Entire fleets imploded from the inside. The Empire, once a unified machine of dominance, had become a fractured beast, biting its own limbs. Rael sat alone near a scorched hill overlooking the ruins of Vorash, watching a Black Banner flag flutter in the wind. Holt joined him, setting down a bottle of synth whiskey salvaged from a Dominion officer's quarters. You ever think we'd get this far? Holt asked. Rael didn't answer right away. His eyes were locked on the distant stars, where Zarketh fleets once loomed like gods. Now they flickered, uncertain. We weren't supposed to, Rael said. They wrote us off as a failed species. Holt grinned. Guess failure's contagious. Rael shook his head. No, something else is. What's that? He turned to face his oldest friend, eyes burning with something more than defiance. Freedom. On Zarketh Prime, the Black Citadel world where the Empire had ruled since before Earth learned to split atoms, the High Command convulsed. The AI web was corrupted. Over a dozen major sectors had gone completely dark. Even worse, they were receiving defectors. From within, elite generals refusing to obey extermination orders, old allies questioning their own programming. One of the high sentients floated forward, her neuro-aura flickering. The contagion must be contained. Then contain Earth, another said. No, said a third, voice trembling. Destroy it. The room fell silent. Then, slowly, it agreed. A dark fleet began assembling, massive war barges never before deployed, each one capable of cracking continents and scorching atmospheres. They were coming, and this time there would be no occupation. No assimilation, only annihilation. Back on Earth, Rael received the intercepted signal. Sarai decoded it, her face pale in the firelight. They're sending the eradicators. Rael stood, spine straightening. Then we stop being a resistance, he said. We become something else. What? Holt asked. Rael looked to the stars, those quiet, watching stars. A threat. The Eradicator fleet arrived like an extinction-level event. 200 ships, each one the size of a city. Weapons carved into planetary crusts. Atmospheric disintegrators. Singularity generators. No more occupation, no more assimilation. This time, the Dominion was here to erase humanity from time itself. And Earth? It stood alone, or so the Zarketh believed. Rael Thorn stood in the command tower of New Vorash, formerly a Dominion bastion, now a Black Banner stronghold stitched together with human ingenuity and alien scraps. He wore no armor, just an old coat laced with shrapnel and defiance. His voice carried across the rebel network. They're coming to end us, because we ended their fear. We broke their chains, we killed their gods, and now they want us gone. Sarai Mendez stood beside him, nodding once. Her fingers danced across a terminal linked to every rebel frequency. Rael continued. This isn't about Earth anymore. This is about every species that ever watched their skies go dark under Dominion flame. You hear me out there? This isn't Earth's last stand. He looked up into the camera. This is everyone's first punch. The Dominion fleet entered Earth orbit at 0400, but something was wrong. No defense grid, no counterfire, no fleet waiting in high orbit. Earth looked abandoned. The lead Eradicator, unyielding perfection, began charging its world-breaker cannon, an exotic core designed to collapse a planet's magnetic field and boil its oceans. Then the human signal lit up again. A hologram shimmered on the bridge. Rael Thorn. Welcome to our grave, he said. We hope you enjoy your stay. And then Earth fired back. They'd known this day would come. Sarai had spent months hardwiring Dominion engines into Earth's magnetic lattice. Holt had led rogue squads that planted nuclear traps in orbit. The Black Banner had abandoned Earth, evacuated. The last civilians hidden their real fleet behind Jupiter's shadow. What was left was a shell, a trap. When the first Eradicator fired, it triggered the planet's new defense matrix, a self-detonating planetary crust laced with quantum destabilizers. Earth began to tear itself apart on purpose. The explosion wasn't just planetary. It was tactical. Shockwaves destroyed half the Eradicator fleet instantly. The rest scattered. In their panic, they fled, straight into the ambush. From behind Saturn's rings, the true Black Banner Armada emerged. Not Earth's fleet, humanity's fleet, built from scrap, sacrifice, and shared rebellion. Command ships piloted by humans, Rovan, Varnax, and others now calling themselves allies. Rael's flagship, Ghost of Terra, led the charge. Missile pods, plasma lances, electromagnetic jammers. Dominion ships fell in every direction. They'd never fought a war of ideas before. And now they were dying in one. A final message pulsed from Sarai Mendez's uplink. Earth is gone, but we are not. We are what comes next. The last Eradicator, pierced by a dozen warheads, crashed into the lunar surface. The battle for Earth was over. Earth was ashes. But humanity had ascended. Months later, the galaxy looked different. Zarketh. Territory had shrunk by half. Black Banner forces were no longer insurgents. They were liberators. Their symbol, an obsidian triangle streaked with red, hung over newly free worlds. A new coalition was forming, human-led but not human-only, a mosaic of species once enslaved, now allied under a single vow, never again. Rael stood on the deck of Ghost of Terra, staring at the empty spot in space where Earth had once been. Holt approached quietly. Regret it? Rael didn't blink. We were never going to win from a fortress. We had to become a flame. Sarai joined them, datapad in hand. The Varnax just voted to join the banner. That's 13 systems. Rael turned to her. Then we burn brighter. She smiled. until the last chain breaks. From the ashes of Earth, a legend had risen, not of survival, but of defiance. And in the shadow of the fallen dominion, the galaxy whispered a new truth. Humanity was meant to be defeated. Now we're the ones destroying empires.